My name's Chloe, and I grew up living in the shadow of my older sister, Ava, the golden child everyone adored. Our house was always buzzing with people coming and going. Aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it, they were there. They'd pour into our backyard like ants at a picnic, lured by Diane's famous barbecue and the promise of another one of Ava's little performances. That yard felt more like a stage than anything else, with its neatly trimmed grass and the big oak tree that looked like it belonged in a postcard. Richard would be manning the grill, the smell of burgers and smoke floating through the air, while Diane dashed around making sure nobody's cup was ever empty. "Ava, sweetie," Aunt Carol would call out, her voice slicing through all the chatter. "Give us a song, won't you?" And just like that, every pair of eyes would land on my sister. With a giggle and a dramatic flair, Ava would hop onto a chair, her shiny blonde curls bouncing, eyes dancing with excitement. She'd clear her throat like she was on Broadway, then launch into My Heart Will Go On, channeling her inner Celine Dion. The crowd? Oh, they ate it up, cheering like they'd paid for tickets. Diane and Richard would be beaming, and Richard, bless him, would sometimes even get misty-eyed. Meanwhile, I'd be lurking somewhere off to the side, trying to blend into the bushes. It's not that I didn't want to be part of it, I just couldn't. My singing sounded more like a dying cat than anything musical. And as for poetry, yeah, no shot. Whenever I tried to speak up, the words would get stuck in my mouth, tripping over each other until I was red-faced and stammering. I'd catch the grown-ups whispering, comparing me to Ava. Not that it was ever subtle. Diane and Richard didn't hide their favoritism either. Ava got the royal treatment, dance classes, voice lessons, art programs, you name it, she was in it. Me? I was left to figure things out on my own. Not that I really minded all that much. There was comfort to be found in the dusty books stacked high on our shelves. The only person who ever really got me was Great Aunt Bess. She always managed to find me tucked away behind the garage or nestled in the treehouse with a novel in hand. "What adventure are you off on today, Chloe?" she'd ask, settling down beside me. I'd glance up and give her a smile, grateful for the company. "Just diving into some ancient Egypt stuff," I'd say, holding up whatever book I was buried in that day. Aunt Bess would chuckle, eyes crinkling with warmth. "You've got a smart little head on your shoulders, girl. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Those moments with her were like a breath of fresh air. She never asked me to sing or dance or put on a show. She let me be exactly who I was, quiet, curious, more into stories than small talk. Still, as much as I cherished those times, they didn't make the sting of being invisible any less real. Every time Ava learned a new song or won some award, the spotlight would shine brighter on her. And along with the praise came the perks, new outfits, fancy gadgets, whatever she wanted. And me? I got Ava's cast-offs and a whole lot of size. School quickly became my safe haven. I wasn't the popular girl, but I found my place in the classroom. I didn't just sit there zoning out. I paid attention like my life depended on it. After class, I'd hang back and quietly ask, "Miss Evans, could you maybe explain that part about mitosis again? I'm still a little lost." She'd smile, clearly happy I cared. "Of course, Chloe," she'd say. "Let's go over it together." And if the teacher didn't have time, I'd ask for more books to read. Soon, my backpack was bursting at the seams with extra materials. I'd stay up late, flipping through page after page, determined to learn everything I could. All that effort eventually paid off. By the time I reached high school, I was top of my class. For once, I was actually the best at something. I even made a couple of friends, fellow book lovers who didn't mind that I wasn't loud or flashy. But as graduation loomed, our house basically turned into Ava headquarters. Diane was always hovering, helping her perfect some big portfolio for an advertising and PR program at some ritzy college. "Oh, honey, this idea is genius," Diane would gush, fawning over Ava's work. "You're such a natural." I'd roll my eyes and slip away to my room, diving back into my books. Then one night, during yet another dinner all about Ava's future, something inside me broke. "I'm going to college too," I said, louder than I meant to. "I want to study management." You could have heard a pin drop. And then, to my horror, they all started laughing. "Oh, sweetheart," Diane chuckled, dabbing at her eyes. "We can't afford that. You'll need to get a job after high school. You're just not like your sister." Felt like getting slapped across the face. "But I'm top of my class," I shot back, voice shaking. "I get straight A's." I stormed off, came back with my report card, and slammed it on the table. They all leaned in, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Well, I'll be damned," Richard mumbled, scratching his head. "When did this happen?" "It's been happening," I snapped. "For years. But none of you ever noticed." Diane looked genuinely stunned, maybe even guilty. "Chloe, we didn't know." But Richard cut her off. "Doesn't change a thing. We've spent everything we had on Ava's education, Chloe. There's nothing left," Richard said flatly. "I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. You'll start working at Uncle Joe's restaurant after graduation," Diane added, like it was already settled. I didn't say a word. I just turned and bolted, ignoring their voices chasing after me. I flew up the stairs, slammed my bedroom door so hard the whole house probably rattled, then threw myself onto the bed, shaking with sobs. But in the middle of that breakdown, something inside me snapped into place. "Fine," I thought, my fists digging into the blanket. "If they won't lift a finger to help me, I'll figure it out myself. I'll prove to them what I'm capable of. I'll show them exactly who Chloe really is." The next few months were a blur. Ava left for college in a flurry of hugs and proud goodbyes, like a celebrity heading off to her next big gig. And me? I doubled down on school like my life depended on it, determined to finish at the top. I started spending more time at Great Aunt Bess's little house. The warm, quiet kitchen and the gentle ticking of her old clock became my escape from the Cold War at home. One afternoon, as the sunlight spilled across the table and we sipped tea from mismatched mugs, she finally asked the question I'd been dreading. "So, Chloe," she said softly, her eyes fixed on me with that gentle, knowing look, "what's next after graduation?" I stared down into my tea, struggling to keep the tears back. I don't know, Aunt Bess," I mumbled. "Diane and Richard said they can't afford college. They spent it all on Ava." She was quiet for a long second. Then she reached across the table and wrapped her hand around mine. "Well, sweetheart," she said, giving my hand a squeeze, "I've got a little something put away. I'd like you to have it for school." I blinked at her, stunned. "You're sharp as a tack, and I'll be damned if I let all that potential go to waste." It hit me all at once. Her words, her kindness. It was like a tidal wave crashing over me. I broke down, crying so hard I could barely speak. "Thank you," I whispered, throwing my arms around her. "Thank you so much, Aunt Bess." The next few months flew by, and before I knew it, I was standing on stage, shaking hands and accepting my diploma. I scanned the audience and spotted Aunt Bess, beaming with pride. Diane and Richard were there too, looking proud, but also weirdly stiff, like they weren't quite sure what to feel. That evening, while I was flipping through college brochures at the kitchen table, Diane walked in with her fake sweet voice. "Chloe, honey," she cooed. "Your Uncle Joe called. He's got a spot for you at the restaurant. Isn't that exciting?" I set the brochure down and took a deep breath. "Actually, Diane, I won't be needing that job," I said calmly. "I'm going to college." Richard stepped into the room, frowning. "And how exactly are you paying for that?" he asked, like he already knew the answer wasn't going to sit right with him. "Aunt Bess is helping me," I said, lifting my chin. "She's giving me her savings for tuition." Silence. And then boom. Richard's face went crimson. "Absolutely not," he shouted, voice booming. "If Bess has money, it should go to Ava. She needs a car for her internship next year." I stared at him, stunned. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice rising. "This is my shot, my future. How can you even say that?" "Don't be selfish, Chloe," Diane chimed in, crossing her arms. "Your sister needs that money more than you do." I felt my hands clench at my sides. "No," I said, voice shaking but firm. "It's mine now, and I'm using it for college. That's final." From that moment on, the tension in the house got unbearable. My parents barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was nothing but cold stares and snapping at me over stupid things. One night, after another screaming match, I called Aunt Bess in tears and told her everything. "Pack your bags, sweetheart," she said without a second thought. "You're coming to live with me." The next day, I crammed everything I owned into a suitcase, hopped in a cab, and never looked back. I watched the only home I'd ever known shrink in the rearview mirror and felt this strange, bittersweet relief wash over me. That summer flew by in a blur of applications, paperwork, and packing. Before I knew it, I was standing on the campus of State University, ready to start fresh. Thanks to my grades and Aunt Bess, I was officially a management major. The first day of classes, I walked into my lecture hall with my head held high. As I sat there, notebook open, taking in every word, one thought kept echoing in my head. I did it. I'm really here. Back at home, Ava was starting her senior year at her fancy college. I hadn't heard much from her or my parents since I moved out, and honestly, I didn't miss them all that much. College life kept me busy, and for once, I felt like I was finally in control of my own story. Then, about a month into the semester, Aunt Bess gave me a call. "Chloe, honey," she said, her voice soft and cautious. "You might want to sit down for this." My stomach dropped as she laid it all out. Ava had come home, out of the blue, and announced she was dropping out. Pregnant. Apparently, she'd been pretty casual about the whole thing. "Oh, don't worry," Ava had said, flicking her hair. "The baby's dad is loaded. We're getting married." But it didn't stop there. Turns out Prince Charming wasn't exactly thrilled when he found out Ava had been sleeping with his friend too. Things blew up. Now they weren't even sure who the father was. Aunt Bess let out a long sigh. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to make sense of it all. A part of me couldn't help but feel a small, bitter satisfaction watching Ava tumble from her pedestal. But that feeling didn't last long. More than anything, I just felt sad. Sad for the mess she'd made. Sad for the version of her that once had everything handed to her and still managed to lose it all. The drama didn't stop there. Aunt Bess kept me in the loop with stories from family gatherings I no longer attended. When Ava finally gave birth, a DNA test confirmed her original boyfriend was the father. But instead of the fairy tale ending she'd imagined, he signed some papers, agreed to pay child support, and disappeared. The final irony? Ava ended up taking a job as a waitress at Uncle Joe's. The same job my parents once tried to shove at me like it was the best I could hope for. I hung up the phone after Aunt Bess told me and just sat there, staring at nothing. I could have gloated, thrown my success in their faces. But I didn't. Instead, I just felt grateful. Grateful for Aunt Bess. For my own determination. For the distance I'd managed to put between who I was and who they thought I'd be. The next few years flew by in a blur, assignments, exams, midnight coffee runs, and everything else college throws at you. And then, just like that, I was graduating. I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, scanning the crowd until I found her, Aunt Bess. She was crying, full-on ugly crying, but smiling too, like she'd just won the lottery. And in a way, she had. We had. Graduating at the top of my class came with perks. One of them was a job offer, manager at the Gilded Fork, the kind of restaurant people name-drop to impress their in-laws. The salary? Unreal. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The first thing I bought with my paycheck wasn't for me. It was for Aunt Bess. I walked into an electronics store, found the newest, fanciest smartphone they had, and handed over my card like I'd been doing it forever. When I gave it to her, her jaw dropped. "Oh, Chloe," she whispered, turning it over in her hands. "This is too much." I just laughed. "Not even close. Come on, I'll show you how to use it." She picked it up quickly, especially Facebook. Before long, her feed was filled with her garden, her cat, and her famous apple pie, step by step, from dough to golden perfection. I'd scroll through her posts during my breaks, always liking, always commenting. It became our little routine, a thread that kept us connected through the chaos of daily life. Then one afternoon during the dinner rush, my phone buzzed. "Mom." I froze. We hadn't spoken in years. "Chloe," she said, her voice unsure. "We were hoping maybe you'd come by. Just to talk." Something in her tone made me say yes. That Sunday, I stood outside the house I used to call home, my finger hovering over the doorbell. Before I could press it, the door opened. "Chloe," she whispered, pulling me into a tight hug. "It's so good to see you." Inside, everything felt weird. Not hostile, just awkward. Richard was there. Ava too, holding a little girl who looked up at me with wide, curious eyes. You look good, kiddo, Richard said. We hear you're doing well. I am, I replied carefully. I manage the gilded fork now. Their eyes widened. That's wow, Diane said. That's amazing, sweetie. Actually, we were hoping we could talk to you about something. I should have known there was more. They apologized. Said they were wrong. Said they didn't realize what I was capable of. And then Diane glanced at Ava and got to the point. We were hoping you might help Ava get a job. At your restaurant. I looked at Ava. She didn't say anything. Just bounced her daughter on her knee, eyes fixed on the floor. I'll see what I can do, I said. No promises, but I'll ask. To my surprise, Mr. Sterling agreed. We were short-staffed and he was willing to give her a shot admin work behind the scenes. Ava started the next week, and I kept an eye on her, half expecting a meltdown. But she surprised me. She was professional, organized. People liked her. I still didn't trust her completely, but slowly, a quiet working relationship formed. Civil, respectful, a start. And then, just when I thought things had settled, Mr. Sterling called me into his office. Chloe, he said, grinning, I've got a proposal for you. How'd you like to help me expand? My jaw dropped, and just like that, my world exploded in the best way. I was managing the launch of 3 new restaurants, running teams, handling numbers, tasting menus, dealing with suppliers. It was chaotic and brilliant and so much more than I'd ever dreamed of. The money? Wild. I went from budgeting every cent to suddenly having more than I could spend. And that's when the calls started. At first it was small. The roof's leaking, Diane said. We were wondering if you might be able to help. Just a little. Could have said no. But I didn't. Felt weirdly good to say yes. To solve problems with a tap on my screen. After the roof came the water heater. Then it was the plumbing. A few months later, I was bankrolling a full renovation. New paint, new appliances, even a backyard deck. And part of me knew exactly what was happening. They were relying on me now. Funny how the tables turn. As their finances started looking up, mostly thanks to the monthly allowance I'd been sending, the infamous family gatherings kicked off again. But this time, when I showed up, something felt different. Have you heard about Chloe's latest project? Diane would beam, practically bursting as she bragged to the rest of the family. She's opening a new spot downtown, a restaurant. We're just so proud of her. Across the room, I'd catch Ava's gaze. She'd meet my eyes and give me a quiet, knowing smile. Ava was doing pretty well herself. She'd just gotten promoted to head administrator over at the Gilded Fork. My girls, Richard would say proudly, wrapping an arm around each of us. Both of them making their old man proud. A part of me wanted to feel bitter, to remind them of the way they treated me not so long ago. But honestly, a bigger part of me just soaked in the moment. That warm glow of family pride I'd always wanted but never really had. Driving home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Like maybe, just maybe, I finally had everything I'd been chasing all along. A solid career, recognition, and the kind of love I'd spent a lifetime trying to earn. I was the golden child now. But more than that, I was finally my own woman, strong, independent, and standing on my own 2 feet. It was one of those lazy Sunday afternoons where time slows down. I was lounging with a cup of coffee, casually scrolling through Facebook, when a new video popped up, posted by Aunt Bess. It was from a family event I had to skip because of work. Smiling, I tapped play, expecting cheerful faces and the usual chaos. But what I saw turned my stomach. There they were. My parents. Faces flushed with booze and self-righteous anger. Diane was waving her hands dramatically, voice slurred but the words still cutting through. And Chloe? She sneered. That ungrateful little leech. She barely gives us anything. We're not made of money, you know? Richard chimed in, his face a deep shade of red. That's right. It's Ava who's pulling the weight. She's the one keeping that fancy restaurant running. Chloe's just along for the ride. More relatives joined in, nodding and adding their own harsh comments. Some looked uncomfortable, others all too eager to pile on. Ava sat off to the side, clearly awkward, but not saying a single word to defend me. The video ended. I just sat there, completely numb. My heart pounded as I scrolled down to read the comments. And there it was, messages from my parents. Bess, delete this video now. You had no right to post that. Take it down immediately. But Aunt Bess didn't back down. Her reply hit harder than the video. I don't know how to delete videos. And even if I did, I wouldn't. People need to see the truth. Chloe's the one supporting you both. And this is how you treat her? Shame on you. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. My hands trembling. The betrayal digging deep into scars I thought had already healed. Eventually, I picked up my phone and called Aunt Bess. When she answered, her voice was soft and full of care. "Oh, Chloe, sweetheart. I take it you saw the video?" "Yeah," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I saw it." "I'm so sorry, honey," she said, anger slipping into her tone. "But this is who they are. They've always been like this, you just weren't around to see it. Maybe it's better you know now." We stayed on the phone for hours, her comforting me as I tried to process it all: shock, pain, disbelief. By the time night settled in, I had made up my mind. "I'm done," I told her, my voice calm but full of heartache. "No more money. No more help. They made their choice, now they can live with it." The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever lived through. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing: texts, calls, voicemails. I couldn't even bring myself to listen. Their cruel words played in my head like a broken record I couldn't shut off. After a week of silence, I sent one final message. Cold. Direct. "I saw the video. I know how you really feel. Don't contact me again. The money stops here." Their replies came fast. At first, they begged. "Chloe, sweetheart, we didn't mean it. Please forgive us." But when I didn't reply, the tone flipped. "We're your parents. You owe us." Each message cut deeper than the last, but I stood my ground. I'd given them every chance, and all they did was spit it back in my face. Enough was enough. To my surprise, Ava stayed out of the mess. At work, she was all business, focused, polite, like nothing had changed. If she was upset about losing our parents' financial help, she never showed it. Our conversations stayed strictly professional. After a staff meeting one day, she pulled me aside. "I'm not choosing sides," she said softly. "That's between you and them." I nodded, thankful she wasn't making it worse, even though a part of me secretly wished she'd stand up for me. But I got it, she had her own life now. A kid to think about. She couldn't afford the drama either. As weeks turned into months, I leaned more and more on Aunt Bess. Our Sunday video calls became the highlight of my week. She would share stories from her garden or talk about her latest baking projects, providing a much-needed sense of normalcy amidst the chaos of my life. "You're doing the right thing, Chloe," she would remind me when doubt crept in. "Don't let them manipulate you anymore." To my surprise, other relatives started reaching out too. Cousin Emily, who had always been kind to me during family gatherings, sent a heartfelt email. "I saw the video. I want you to know I think you're amazing, Chloe. What you've achieved, how you've helped everyone, you're an inspiration. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Uncle Mark, Richard's brother, called me unexpectedly. "Kid, I've watched you grow up and you've become this incredible woman. Your parents are fools if they can't see how special you are. You've got family in your corner, remember that." These messages of support were like healing balm to my wounded heart. I realized that while I might have lost my parents, I had gained a family who truly appreciated me for who I was. As the year came to a close, Mr. Sterling called me into his office. I walked in nervous, unsure if the family drama had affected my work. But instead of concern, he greeted me with a broad smile. "Chloe, I'm retiring next year. I want you to take over as CEO of the restaurant group." I stood frozen, completely stunned. "Are you sure?" I finally managed to ask. He nodded, his eyes sparkling with certainty. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You've earned this, Chloe. You're the reason this business has flourished. It's time you took the reins." As I left his office, my head spinning with possibilities, I realized something profound. The little girl who had been overlooked and underestimated had grown into a woman who had surpassed everyone's expectations, including her own.